Randall Einhorn is joining us on the podcast today. We're really excited. He is a director and executive producer. After a start in reality TV on shows like Survivor and Fear Factor, he's spent the last 25 years shaping the look and feel of some of TV's most beloved comedies, like The Office, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Parks and Recreation, Modern Family, Happy Endings, Nurse Jackie, just to name a few. Since its debut in 2021, Randall has also been a key creative force on the Abbott Elementary team, directing 40 episodes to date, including the Emmy-nominated episode from season 5 called Ballgame. And we are so excited to dive into that episode and his illustrious career. So thank you so much again for coming on the
Please.
podcast.
My pleasure.
So I know we're going to talk about Abbott Elementary and Ballgame, but I love to just hear about what your early influences are. You've been in the industry for so long. What inspired you to work in this industry, to specifically go into cinematography before directing? Like anything about your early influences and your early career?
Yeah, I don't know that I made any decisions that really got me here. I think it all kind of just happened. I started off being a whitewater kayaker who was videoing whitewater rafting trips. So I'd kayak down the rapids, hop out on a rock, film the whitewater rafting trip, sell them the video later. And then I was a sponsored kayaker. So Mark Burnett needed to find a course for Eco Challenge. And so a 500-mile wilderness adventure race. A buddy who's the location manager said, can you come take Mark and I for look on some rivers? So I did that. And I convinced Mark he should hire me to be a cameraman on Eco Challenge. And I did that for 7 years. And then I went on and DP'd the first Survivor and stayed with that for a little bit. And then, so I never really chose to be a camera operator. Actually, the way I was doing it is the company I was doing these expeditions for said, why don't you start filming it? I'm like, yeah, with like a camera or something. I'll try that. Yeah, sure. So I started filming it. And then, I directed season 1 of Fear Factor. I did a bunch of other documentary stuff. And then I got The Office, which was just crazy to me. They would take the guy who was used to being outside, and they brought me inside and put me under fluoro lights. And I became the DP of The Office because I knew that verite style documentary thing where it's a delicate dance where you have to frame each other out and keep an eye on the eye lines of our subjects and move accordingly. So that's how I started DPing The Office, which was my first narrative script, my first narrative show. And I learned a lot there. And while doing that, Greg Daniels said, "You're telling jokes to the camera." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm trying to, Greg." And he says, "You should direct some." I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" So that's how it happened. It's just opportunities, opportunity, opportunity. I didn't go to film school. I didn't study cinematography. I often say that my greatest asset in as a cinematographer or director is I don't know any better. I probably do now, but I kind of have a look at things laterally approach. I know it's done this way, but maybe we should try this way. So I think that's informed my skill set for sure, is kind of figuring it out on the go.
Yeah, and to that end, like, how did doing Survivor, reality TV, and documentary help inform, your work on sitcom? Because obviously then it became very documentary adjacent, the sitcoms that
Hmm.
you were working on.
Yeah, I think I certainly took some of the things that I felt shooting, verite style that I brought to reality TV was, when two characters are having a private conversation, I would always back off and go longer on the lens so they can have a private conversation. They can feel like they're having a private conversation. And also it kind of puts this veneer of authenticity on the footage. When somebody, it makes you feel like you shouldn't be catching this. You shouldn't be listening to this. It makes you pay attention even more. And I carried that straight through, like on Jim and Pam. When Jim and Pam are ever going to be together, I would back way up and get long on the lens so that they could have their private moment. And it also made the viewer feel like they were privileged to see something so special because it feels much more authentic than a camera right there, right next to somebody, and then trying to figure out how they're going to come together.
Yeah, it seems like you kind of pioneered like just like the camera movements of the mockumentary style in general. And you've of course started on The Office, worked on Parks and Rec, now Abbott, and they're all mockumentaries. I'm curious why you think that format might have staying power and why audiences are so eager to like lap that up every time.
The one thing I really always try to do when I'm watching, when I'm shooting something, is I really try to make our viewers participants and not passengers. And I've said this a lot, but it is a real thing that I want people to be going to look, just to strain, to see something they can't necessarily see, to make it a little inconvenient for them. And I think there's that layer, that finesse that you could put on a mockumentary comedy that you can't. It's another layer you can put on it that another comedy can't. You know what I mean? Like, you just catching somebody when they are in a real moment and they said something stupid, and the camera just moves on you a little bit. They feel it. Sometimes like when Steve Carell would do it, I would just actually take a step forward, and he would feel that pressure. So you can pressure the characters because you're a character in the scene with them. The camera is a character in the scene. It's not just a piece that's getting all the story. It's an active character.
Yeah, and you've spoken about that in the past. I interviewed you during the early seasons of Abbott about it. I think that's such a cool concept too, and it changes the way that I, as a viewer, engage with these types of shows. I'm curious how on Abbott specifically the characters of the camera operators have evolved since the beginning to where you are now. You just came to us from shooting a scene of season 6.
Well, we've had the same camera operators since the very, very beginning. We had a different crew on the pilot, but then when we geared up for our first season, we had, we brought on a different DP and some camera operators who have all done some, degree of reality TV or documentaries or just that verite style. So I'm really always leaning into what, what would the camera do? What would the camera do in this situation? I'm always trying to give the camera operators kind of a similar direction that you would give an actor. Like, this, he knows, this, she knows, he does, you know what I mean? So it informs what the camera does, as opposed to just saying, push in on this line. Try to give them the story beats of what they should be feeling at that moment. And that's evolved really, really quite nicely. That makes the cameras more autonomous. It gives each camera operator their own opinion, and I think that's a really fun thing. It's really interesting to see. Remember I used to do The Office, and every time Jenna Fisher would smile at me, I'd smile back at her. So anytime she smiled or was amused, I couldn't help it. She just made me smile.
I was about to ask, like, did the actors ever like react to the cameras, or like maybe have a suggestion of how they want the camera to push in on a certain moment, or is it purely like your team?
No, they're not really. They're not asking for various frames. It's kind of an instinctive thing that I think should be just the opinion of the camera operators, or the opinion of the documentarians. Yeah.
Yeah, they're in charge of their characters.
No, they certainly have. The actors certainly catch themselves at certain times, and they interact with the cameras in such a great way. And sometimes I'm asking, maybe you feel a little caught here, and that camera's catching you, so maybe a glance there. And sometimes they're just doing it anyway.
So congratulations again on Ballgame. You have an Emmy nomination for directing that episode. This episode is crazy. There's so much packed into it. I rewatched it and I can't believe how much is actually happening. Do you remember the conversations you had with Quinta when you first found out that she and the writing team wanted to stage a whole episode at a Phillies game?
Oh yeah, I'm like, you guys are crazy.
Yes,
that was my initial reaction was like, oh my golly gosh. Yeah, let's think about that. And then what I realized, it was very, very high degree of difficulty. For some reason, I enjoy this degree of difficulty, and that carries through. I remember in The Office, everything that was more difficult made it better. Whatever makes it harder makes it better, and that's something I've always carried through. I remember looking at it and thinking, this is going to be really, really challenging, but if we stick the landing, it's going to be fantastic. That being said, we had so much to do. I think we basically shot it over 2 days. One day we had our 10 characters or 9 characters and 400 extras, and that was the non-game day. So I had nearly 14 pages to shoot in daily on non-game day. Then, the dialogue would be, something's happening on Kyle Schwarber's up. He may, let's see if he can hit a home run. Whip to the next day when Kyle Schwarber was there and it's game day, and hopefully he does hit a home run, and then he hits the home run, and then I whip back to our cast who are like, oh my God, are doing the scripted lines. So there are all these connections. There was over 70 planned whips in the script to connect non-game day acting dialogue stuff to game day where it hopefully happens. And it wasn't just the whips to the game, but it was like, it was also the Fanavision, because a lot of that stuff played on the Fanavision. So it was like, oh, it's, oh, it's home run. Boom, we go up, follow the home run. He hits a home run. We go up to Fanavision, and we see everybody celebrating as Kyle Schwarber's, So we're on the field, the Fanavision, the stands, and it was a lot to coordinate. Just that moment where Kyle Schwarber throws the ball and it hits Quinta in the head, and that was all in the Fanavision. So we have our three cameras, our three documentarians. Then we also had the Fanavision camera, who's providing the feed to the actual Fanavision, and that was all shot live with the Major League Baseball camera operator providing the Fanavision footage. But it was it was just so much to shoot. I really had to have a good plan on that one, and it was multiple times in a scene because they're always reflecting on what's going on in the game. It was the most I've ever prepped on any episode ever, by far. And we got it done.
We were going to ask about how much prep this took versus a normal episode where it's just like at the school. But also it sounds like
Yeah,
you're making a lot of like on-set decisions about things happening.
very much so. Anything that's happening real, I mean, I'm always going to lean into the realness of it and have our actors who never leave character, stay in that moment. There's a moment where I think Kyle hits his fourth home run, which wasn't planned. So we adjusted on the Quinta. He's going to have four home runs. Goes, absolutely, because we were all caught up in the game at that moment and Kyle's performance. So yeah, we certainly did some adjustments on the day, but anytime something was real happening on the field, like his fourth home run, we pan to Shirley Ralph, and her eyes are just crazed. I mean, that was not just acting. She was a fan, a Philly fan from Philly, at the game, loving it, which is really really fun. And watching our cameras, who are just getting everything. We were all into it. It was so loud. All the best laid plans that we had of, we'll just use our walkies to talk to the actors. Yeah, no. There's 10,000 people there going crazy. So I couldn't even talk to my camera operator. So I just had to continually run down and scream a note to them and then come over and scream my note to the cast. It was busy.
Yeah, we wanted to ask if there was anything, kind of any unexpected complications that came up. I noticed this time watching it that it's raining at the end when they're on the field with Kyle. That feels pretty real.
That was pretty real. So after Kyle Schwarber hit four home runs like a legend, he came and did a scene with us. And I know we had like 30 minutes to shoot that scene because the sprinklers were going to come on and we couldn't really control that. But it started raining, so we kind of accelerated everything. I think we did that in like 3 takes. Kyle Schwarber, with multiple entrances and exits, he was a legend. Just incredible. But one thing did happen. We had this plan where our characters would be sitting in a constant light and also be shaded. So we had these big shade, these big scrim frames hanging over them. And on the day, it was a little too windy, and we had to take them down. So that meant our cast was going to be sitting in bright daylight for a period of time. So the period of time that I chose for them to sit in bright daylight was at a time that we needed to show the passage of time. So you see them start in a shaded area, and then there's, time they're in a bright lit area because the sun moves around through the day, in that 3 hours of a baseball game. And it was like, okay, well, should we try to move to other shaded areas, or no, hang on, this tells our story better. This is passage of time. At first I was like, oh no, our plan. Yeah, but you just pivot. Shit happens, adjust. Yeah. So that worked out really great. I love that happened because we wouldn't have not have done that.
The best laid plans always.
Best laid plans.
And then you mentioned extras, and I just want to get a sense of how many extras were you dealing with, and just other people at the game who I'm sure are like, oh my God, there's an episode of Abbott Elementary being filmed right
Yeah.
here. What was it like wrangling all of that?
So the first day, the dialogue day, where they did just under 14 pages, I had 400 extras that fit our wedge of our cameras, our 3 cameras. You asked before, and I didn't really answer, what was the prep like? So I started on this script before we even started shooting our first episode. And I flew out to Philly with my AD and art director, and we looked at and decided what we needed to do, where was the best place for us to film. Then I came back and directed, I think, the first 3 episodes or the first 2 episodes, and then I had a week off to go, to further plan, lock down the plan for Philly. Normally if you're doing a 5-day episode, you have 4 days of prep. I think we prepped that episode for weeks.
You have to.
You really did. It was really fun.
It felt like being at the game and also being part of the show. Two very Philly experiences, I imagine.
Yeah, it really is, and I do think that just by connecting the game day and the non-game day, you really did feel like you were at the show. The one game day where we had the 400 people, that was great, and then we brought some of the people that were in the near vicinity of where our cast was sitting, and we brought them back for game day.
Well, I interviewed your showrunners a couple years ago, and they had talked about how much you guys regularly don't film in Philadelphia. You go once or twice a season, but the city of Philly loves this show, just loves seeing Philadelphia depicted in such a loving way on television.
I love Philly. Now, I didn't know it at all, but the way that Philly has embraced us is just warms your heart. Every time we go there, they just lay down the carpet. Come on. It's wonderful. Beautiful city. Great people.
Very proud city, too.
Very proud. Brotherly love. Bring it on. We could use a bit of that.
Okay, so switching gears just slightly, with Abbott and The Office, we know that you joined the team from the beginning. You were really involved in figuring out the identity of the show. But then on shows like Parks and Rec and It's Always Sunny, you were brought in a little bit later in the run. So just curious how your process changes when you're joining an established show versus when you're building it from the ground up.
Well, I think joining an established show takes a degree of humility, but also the confidence to go for the things that you want to do without breaking the mold of the show. Episodic director, that it's a tricky situation because so often you're like, great, we got it, and we got it, right? You're always second guessing, which I'm not here. So that's a very different thing. Episodic directing is it's a tricky balance. You just need to realize that it's not about you. You're part of something bigger that's going on, next week when you're not there, and has its own canon and history. I love directing pilots and world building, creating the world. And having done this pilot, I really knew what I wanted it to look like, because I wanted it to be a different story, a different feeling than The Office. Those are very different stories, So for me, the pilots that I've done, form follows function, which is why Wilfred looked completely different than, The Office and Parks and Rec or any of the pilots I've done. They always you got to find their own look and build their own world.
And that's why they work so well, because they have their own identity.
Yeah, they should, just like a character.
I guess looking at Abbott and then the rest of the shows that you've worked on, in the context of Ballgame specifically, was there another episode from previously in your career that kind of helped as a comp for this? We know when you talk about doing the extensive prep or being off the set, where you like, yes, we did this back in the day on whatever, and like called on that knowledge?
I think I did a scene in the pilot of Fargo, season 2. There wasn't enough nighttime, so it was the big murder scene with Kieran Culkin in a Waffle Hut, and we didn't have enough nighttime to shoot that much work if we were shooting it on location. So we built the Waffle Hut on a green screen on a stage, shot the entire thing there, and then we took the Waffle Hut and built it out in the field in the snow, and did all the plates for it and all the connective tissues, so that when they go outside, Kieran Culkin goes outside and gets run over. We needed all of that. So I think that had well over 100 setups just to get it done in both places. So that's kind of a similar thing where you're shooting the same thing on different days and trying to meld them together.
Wow. Fargo was not the answer I expected.
Gang wrestles for the troops. That was a big day too. I remember that. That was I think there was we did one day that had 70 setups just moving to get it all done. Yeah.
I'm sweating at the thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious, I was looking at your IMDb in prep for this, and it seems like you've primarily focused on working in network and cable comedies and also a few dramas, but not really much streaming. Do you have a reason for that, or is that just kind of the way the cookie crumbled?
No, that's just kind of the way it found. Yeah, it's just what happened. You know, I think I also enjoy comedies that can push the envelope, like I did the Mick, which definitely pushed the envelope. That could have been a cable show. Some would argue it should have been. I like when things are, they're pushing the boundaries a little bit there, you know? I did, Lodge 49, which is a very, very different thing for me. I did the pilot to Lodge 49 and the second episode, and then I did the finale, and that was a very different feel, and that was also that was on AMC. But no, it's kind of where I landed. You know, I don't actually watch comedy, um, but I work in it. So I guess
Oh, wow.
maybe because I work in it, I don't need to watch it. You know, I've laughed a bunch through my day, and I laugh in life in general. So
Yeah, you're living it.
I am. I get to giggle every day.
The best. So Emmy nominations aren't necessarily new for you. I believe you're on number 9, which is incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But what would a win mean to you at this stage of your career and in this stage of Abbott? 5 seasons in.
Love that we are a network television show, and we are getting Emmy nominations in season 6 of our network television show, competing against shows. We're 2130, 4-act structure. That shapes the show a lot, you know? Build to the act out, build to the act out, existential crisis, end of act two. It's just so, it tends to be can be a little formulaic because you need to serve all these things. And we're competing against shows that it doesn't matter. A couple years ago, when I was nominated for directing as well, we were up against a 71-minute episode in comedy. Was The Bear. And, it didn't feel right. Why am I, how can I be competing with somebody that, a show that can swear, a show that doesn't matter what length it is, it's whatever makes it the best. And we have all these constraints. We can't swear, can't be nude, can't do a lot, but in spite of it, we find our way to keep it entertaining, it's challenging. It really is. But I have to say, for me, I've never, I always go to those things thinking, no, we'll see, if somebody else wins, great. As long as the comedy wins, great. But this time, I don't know, it was so hard. It was such a high degree of difficulty, and we nailed it. And it'd be nice to win.
It's always nice to win, so we'll be rooting for you for sure.
It's nice to win. Yeah.
And then just the last question. You've worked on so much in your very illustrious career, like we mentioned. Is there anything in your filmography that you wish had a bigger reception, or just like a hidden gem that you want to turn people onto?
Yeah, there are. There are a couple, I mean, I think Wilfred was weird. It was wonderful. It was weird. We shot it for nothing. It was such an odd show. It didn't. We went 4 years, which is amazing, but we were shooting that show for a fraction of any other TV show, and we won an ASC award for cinematography on it. We shot it on stills cameras on vintage lenses I bought off the eBay. I wish that got a little bit a bigger run. Kids Are All Right, show set in the 70s. I loved how that looked. I loved the family. That was a very high degree of difficulty pilot. But, it only went 1 year for one reason or another. But it's nice when a place, a show finds a home, and you can just afford to grow the characters because you're coming back, or you have 22, as opposed to 13. That's the one advantage of 22, is that you can grow the characters in a real way. You don't have to rush their trajectory like you do if you only have 10 episodes, where people have to fall in love immediately. You can see it happen over time.
Yeah. I think
Well,
like the age old thing of that is like the Parks and Rec first season kind of didn't have its footing right away, but was given the time and space to come back and really delve into it a little bit more. And like,
Hmm.
I wish more shows got that.
Yeah, I mean, Seinfeld nearly got canceled so many times. Season 2 of The Office, we had no idea. Season 3, we had no idea if we're coming back. It's just wild to think about the iconic, beloved series that it is. We were struggling to come back at times.
Randall, thank you so much for joining us. Again, you have such an amazing career. It's just like an honor to be able to talk about these shows that we love, that you have helped shape, and Abbott especially. It brings me such joy to have a sitcom like this right now when, as you mentioned, a lot of things are experimental or shorter seasons, and it's just, we're craving traditional television. So thank you again. Congratulations on your nomination. Abbott Elementary Ballgame is streaming. It's available on Disney Plus, and Emmy voting is now open for anyone who wants to vote for it.
Thank you very much.
I hate to kill.